Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience and for waiting. I know lunch awaits after this session. I hope we can maintain your concentration levels. I thought I'd just begin with a bit of a set the tone, really, for this panel. So very early in my stint, I recall a discussion I had. So I spent 7 years in Singapore with Credit Suisse. I remember walking into the elevator one day, and the head of investment banking for ASEAN was also in the elevator. And he asked, so where are you coming from? And I said, oh, there was an IPO, a roundtable for an entity that's about to be listed in Indonesia. The question that he asked next was not whether there was demand on the table, whether it's institutional, whether it was retail, who the sponsor is, nothing of that sort. The question really was, what's the fees to Credit Suisse that we make if we cross this bridge on the IPO? So really, it also reminds me of a podcast I heard with the managing director of the London Stock Exchange talking about markets, and basically suggesting that stock markets, have they really done the work they were entrusted to do, which is for capital to find places where it was needed most, expansion, a new line of business, and now obviously we are all joined together on finding access for our sustainability objectives. With that background in mind, when we sat together as a team at PSX, we'd got one big advantage with us, which is tailwind, macroeconomic stability. So how do we use it to our advantage? So we sat down and we said 3 pillars which you need to focus on, one of which was obviously development of the market, whether it's product, listings, investors. It was governance, because our ecosystem needed a bit of an upgrade. There are people who've not really kept up the pace in terms of technology as much as they need to. So we need to bring them along as well. And then operational efficiency. How efficient is the PSX itself in terms of policies and procedures? How aligned is it to technology internally? With that, we began the journey, because a lot of it has to do with, and some of these exchanges, I'm sorry, I quit the salutation part. I thought, enough has been said to welcome everybody. The thank you, SECP and Chairman Saab, for putting this event together with the CMIs, because a lot of reflection is actually needed on the deepening of markets. There was some commentary, thank you, Commissioner Saab, for mentioning UINs. So 135,000 investors is what we've added in 2.25 odd years. What that means is average, and don't worry, I've done the math, is under 5,000 investors a month. The good news is the last month was 16.8 thousand. So clearly the trajectory is back on, whether it's gamification that the PSX is using, whether it's the ecosystem, which is the brokers who are delivering education, awareness, all of that is actually making a positive dent. Let me also mention listings, and this may be a career-limiting proposition, but then 12 in 12 is what I started telling people. 12 listings in 12 months is what we are actually seeing at the moment. That's the foresight that the PSX has. We do a lot of roundtables. I think that's working beautifully for us. And it's roundtables across Pakistan. So it's not only Karachi. We've had 2 in Lahore. We've done 2 in Peshawar. Our next stop is Faisalabad. You all know Interloop. Interloop is partnered with us to bring us people on that roundtable to discuss this journey. Products, clearly a missing link. You'll be glad to know work is in progress. The first product out the door should be cash-settled futures. T+1, I think cash-settled futures, in fact, I should mention, first week of December is when they should roll out. T+1, February. Don't forget options by June next year. ETFs, there was a lot of discussion on ETFs, cross-border especially. And you should know, Chairman Saab, first initial interactions had been had with the Saudi exchange as well. The only difficult part would be quid pro quo. They expect Saudi stock ETF to be listed in Pakistan as well, which would mean currency outflow. So it's a discussion which will need to be had on the Forex side as well. So all of this combined together, I thought that would be a good way to start the panel. Omer Saab, let me begin with you. We've also had a very good, outing in terms of GIS Sukuk. So we've done a lot of collaboratory work with the ministry. Green Sukuk also being one where we partnered. Where do you think are the real missing links in terms of especially corporate debt? Because that seems to be a bit of a missing link, especially on the PSX. What do you think needs to be done? How can we collaborate with the ministry? What advice, policy-wise, can you offer to us so that we can work on this more successfully?
Thank you, Farrukh, and thank you, Chairman SECP. And good afternoon, Assalamu alaikum, and to folks, if they are still there in Hong Kong, good evening. I'm very excited to be here and to address this part of this panel and address the questions by Farrukh. Now, in terms of, so you raised 2 points. Farrukh. One is around the Sharia listing on PSX. Yes, that's happening. Currently, based on the data that we have, about 13% of our total debt is Sharia based. There's clearly a lot of focus in terms of how do we take that debt or the percentage of that overall portfolio, roughly to 20% by 2028. But clearly there are challenges in terms of finding the underlying assets and looking at different structures, how we can increase our offering for the Sharia securities. There is a demand, inherent demand in the market, and we see it in terms of pricing, that the Sharia bond pricing, no surprise, is lower than our conventional debt. So we do have a lot of focus, and we are analyzing the best case studies in terms of what's happened in other Islamic countries, primarily Indonesia and Malaysia, who have quite a successful Sharia government, as well as even the corporate debt model, and see how we can come up, let's say, with asset-light structures and increase the debt offering. So that's a huge priority within the ministry. Now, answering your second point on corporate debt, we do analysis quite frequently. Last year, only 4 issuances happened, roughly around 8.5 billion. This year, roughly 5 issuances happened, roughly 9 billion. So if I were to put it simply in American terms, it's Houston, we have a bit of a problem. And we are trying to address this in consultation with SECP, because the government debt in total terms right now, as of June 30th, is about 55 trillion. And if you look at the corporate debt market, it's practically non-existent. So what the finance minister has done, and he's going to chair it, and he mentioned in the last conference, we have formed a capital markets committee. You're part of that, SECP chairman is part of that, and we are trying to cover all the way from the issuers all the way to the end investors, and see how we can reduce the intermediation across different layers of entities, and also reduce the friction cost. I think you talked about banking fees. That is part of the discussion in terms of how do we reduce the friction cost. We see that frankly, and I'll be candid, we see that in the government bond market also, that the level of intermediation from the issuance all the way down to the retail investors, like there are 4 or 5 different players, and that's nothing but just adds cost to the overall platform. So a lot of work is being done on the corporate debt market. We want to work with the issuers, we want to work with the rating agencies, we want to work with the investors and look at the whole ecosystem. Issuance is one part, then the other part is the hedging part, and one of the key things we have missing from the Pakistani debt market is the active interest rate swap market, which most of the global corporates, if they do a debt issuance, do a swap behind that curve. So we have completely missed that boat in the last 20, 25 years, and we're trying to address through legislation and other things. So I hope it answers your question.
Sure. Thank you so much. Maheen, I'm going to move on to you next. You've kind of seen it all, right? In the sense that you started as an analyst, you run money for Al-Falah, you're doing Infrazamin at the moment. First, gender bond, again, something you can lay claim to. And I came calling when you did the Unity Foods Agri Sukuk. And I said, give us advice. So can you please open up? Tell us, what do we need to do to attract more corporates to look at the PSX from that angle?
Sure. Thank you, Farrukh, and thank you, Chairman, SECP, and thank you to the Exchange for having me here. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. It's great to be here at this forum. So I think the comments we've had recently just give me a really good segue into the corporate debt market, which is something we've been working at. I think now at the Infrazamin desk, we push out at least 2 issuances from the corporate sector a year. So I'm glad that we are a substantial portion of the total corporate debt issuances annually. But 3 to 5 issuances for Pakistan-sized market is nothing. It's truly nothing. Sure. And 3 to 5 to 10 billion rupees is also insignificant, right? So how do we push it forward? So I think I'd backtrack, having seen quite a bit, a bit to say 2007, 2008, where we actually did have a fairly vibrant TFC market, or corporate debt market, that was growing. But with the 2008 financial crisis and sort of all the defaults that happened, after that, corporate debt has become, not a good term when it comes to institutional investors in particular. And we've been trying to adjust those perceptions, and the way you start by doing that, first and foremost, is prove to the market that corporate debt is not risky, is safe. It's a safe bet and it's a safe investment. And that has a whole host of participants, everyone from players like Infrazamin, who do credit enhancement, to rating agencies, to the fund managers, to pension fund reform. So everything filters into that, including the issuers as well. But I think the first thing to prove is that you can do different types of corporate debt, which we've demonstrated over a number of kind of sectors, including telco, agri, gender, and you can have the market absorb that debt, whether it's guaranteed or not. And I think that's the starting point. That's the starting point. So what are the challenges in getting more and more debt out there? I think a lot of challenges exist actually on the issuer side. Okay. Because I think issuers have a choice. They have a choice in going to the banks to get debt, or they have a choice in coming to the capital market. And the costs of both are quite much higher on the capital market side than on the bank side. So if we are to, one, encourage the issuers, I think we have to talk about the incentives for doing a bond issuance. And some of that need to be related to the overall cost and comparison of the cost of getting a bank loan versus coming to the bond market. So I think that's one starting point. The second question that we often get asked by issuers is like, what is the benefit of me doing a bond? I can save time by going to the banks. I can reduce my costs by going to the banks. Why should I be the one going to the bond market? In particular, how will that help me as a corporate? I think there the answers have to be more nuanced. Because you can take the cost equation out, but at the same time, what you have to sell is the story. And the story revolves around visibility, the ability to bring your company to a stage where it is looked at by multiple investors, and sell that sort of story of how you become a corporate which is not just doing everything standard in general corporate Pakistan, but is leveling up. And that story is what we find captures the imagination of those companies that want to be visible, that want to do more than just plain bank vanilla debt, and also want to explore an entirely new investor base. Because let's face it, when you're just focused on one bank market, you don't get the competition in terms of the rate that you could get from the from the bond market.
Sure.
So these are some of the things, and I really think a lot of work should be done on the issuer side. I think we have adequate regulations now. We have the ability for investor protection in the bond market. We have credit enhancement. We have a number of things which help on that front. I think the issuer side needs more incentivization and work. And then on the investor side, here, I would say that there is obviously an element of government bonds crowding out private sector bonds. But having said that, I do think that the investor market, whether it's pension funds or insurance companies or mutual funds, they have significant liquidity to be able to absorb, that debt. And it's a matter of just more issuances coming and then more of that being picked up.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Sure. I think this is a good time for me to also mention Mobilist, which is a UK government initiative that helps to upgrade the ecosystem in various exchanges around the world. We are close to signing an MOU with them as well. I think we have a Pakistan day that's scheduled somewhere in January. And the entire ecosystem will get involved. Sustainability-linked issuances, whether it's debt or equity, they are willing to help. And they then also partner in terms of investment as well on a 2-3 year horizon. I think important for the ecosystem to know that Mobilist is coming soon to educate us all and help us along. Thank you very much. Khawaja Aftab Sahab, thank you so much for joining the panel. So from an IFC, especially from a sustainability standpoint, we are clearly doing a lot of work together with the IFC. So thank you for that engagement. But from your standpoint, can you please highlight what foundational elements must be in place for Pakistan's capital markets to attract long-term institutional capital?
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank SECP and Akif for inviting me. It's a pleasure being here. And I'm really happy I see the vibe here, which I see in large conferences in GCC. So it's a very positive, I think, a step in terms of creating this type of environment. I think the key in these conferences is at the end of the conference, we take stock. What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? What needs to be done? And who will do what?
Sure.
So that rather than having just an intellectual discussion, we come to a really action plan and then periodically follow on that action plan. So I'll take you to memory lane. I remember when I left Pakistan a few decades ago, the capital market at that time, we were well advanced in the capital market compared to our regional peers. India was a closed market at that time. India just came out of a balance of payment crisis. Pakistan at that time had regular IPOs coming up in the market, highly oversubscribed, a lot of retail investors. We had a good debt capital market, TFC issues coming regularly. I don't know, many of you from that period can remember. So there was slowly a building up of a capital market or capital market, debt market, where we could clearly see that a replacement of bank financing is coming in place, and then also tapping international capital markets. So we saw GDRs, we saw ADRs. True. So things were moving in the right direction.
Yeah. What
happened? And then we had investment banks, we have international brokerage firms, we had Modaraba companies. So there were a lot of things which were happening in the market. So we need to take stock what happened. Why after going a few steps forward, we went backward. And what we were doing at that time, we are still, I would say, if we compare now, we want to restart the debt capital market. So it's a good time to learn from what other peers in the region have done, what IFC and other international institutions have done. So I think the key is, it's not a rocket science. The key is that you need macroeconomic stability, security. Yeah. You need robust regulations. You need modern technology, modern infrastructure. You need diversification of investor base, and you need really top-notch international standard disclosure policies.
Sure.
And that's, I would say, one of the most important things, because especially when you want to attract retail investors and international investors, the trust, the confidence, the transparency become one of the key criterias. So Maheen covered in terms of on both on the equity market and debt capital market. I think we need to create a lot more awareness, a lot of advisory services, technical assistance, a systemic approach towards helping listing-ready companies.
Fair.
That rather than companies thinking and coming up, there has to be some forum who targets these companies to bring them to listing.
Fair.
And of course, there has to be some incentive. The whole incentive plan, what other regions have come, it's a very long discussion. But everybody knows with a click of button, you can know what others have done, what has worked, what has not worked. On the debt capital market, Maheen mentioned about the supply side. So you have, on the supply side, we need these debt funds who are primary for developing
Sure.
debt capital market. You need to structure products which you can cater or target in insurance companies, you can target pension funds, you can target sovereign wealth funds, SOEs. These are really, really, really important. And then you talk about ESG and climate. I think capital market is a very good via media in terms of in terms of tackling with development challenges.
Yeah.
If you have a problem in job creation, you have a problem on the climate side, you have a problem on the infrastructure, capital market provides solutions for each and every of these problems. And especially now, going forward, there's a lot of development happening. Recordec is a good example of mining industry coming into place, and that will have a demonstration effect. It's a game changer for the country because it will be the largest private sector FDI ever Pakistan has come to Pakistan. And that will have now a number of, I can see international mining companies, US, Canada, China, they're looking into Pakistan.
Yes.
Local companies are working. So that will also create banks, local banks that does not have capacity. If those scales of project comes into Pakistan, one has to depend on international financial institution. So you need to have a buffer between international financial institutions as well as local banks so that you have a capital market which not only mobilize local investment but also attract foreign international investment. And I can mention you with my experience in the region and beyond the region, investors are hungry for safe, secure and good yields.
For sure.
And countries like Pakistan can provide those yields once we structure it well and once we identify good bankable projects.
Yeah.
And then I can give you some examples in terms of what IFC has recently done in peer markets, like India, which I mentioned in 1990 was nowhere. Today, India is market cap is 130% plus of GDP, where Pakistan is less than 20%. So there's so much space. If we have more companies coming up and there's so much space to grow. Yeah. And the markets are, in terms of, from perspective of, they don't have depth or very narrow from that perspective. And we also need to attract mid-sized companies coming and listing. That brings a discipline also.
Good.
So a good example is India. We work through a fintech company. Through that fintech company, can you imagine how much increase happened in the retail investors? Can anybody guess? I want the audience more than 50%, more than 100% with just one initiative in terms of depth of retail. Anybody can answer? 300%, wow. 3x just with working with retail. And you've seen Robinhood disrupting the whole US market in terms of retail. And I can mention that with pride that the founder of Robinhood is the son of parents who were both working with IFC. So IFC is not only helping through staff, but through the families as well. And it created complete, rather than usually a new company comes and adopt these large giants.
Yeah.
Robinhood completely changed the business model.
Sure.
And everybody, all the companies, whether it was Charles Schwab, Fidelity, they had to adjust to their model.
Sure.
So that you can think that how innovation is important. The second example is on the ETF side. I think there was a lot of discussion on the ETF side. IFC worked in Morocco in terms of establishing the first ETF, and with thus just one ETF in 1 year, 25% liquidity of Morocco market increased over $200 million.
Wow.
Third example is if you want to really attract foreign investors, you need to have some derivatives. You
Sure.
need to have hedging mechanism so that they know they go away with uncertainty, whether it's interest rate swap or cross currency swap. And Pakistan derivatives are like less than 0.5% of market capitalization.
Yeah.
In Kenya, we introduced some very simple derivatives, and those derivatives increased liquidity by $500 million. So I'm
Sure.
just giving examples of countries which are not developed. And last, when I moved in one of my posting in Turkey at that time came out of this 1990, early 2000 banking crisis. And they quickly decided that they can start with a clean slate. They focus a lot on capital markets, on new products, which I can cover in the next
Sure.
time later on because it's too long.
So Khawaja, you'll be pleased to know we're doing all of the required to make sure that the capital markets, in terms of listings at least, middle tier companies, small tier companies, because there is a GEM board for the smaller counters, and there is obviously the main board. When I say roundtables, we've realized we have to step up as PSX and help the ecosystem deliver those companies to PSX. So when I say roundtables are working effectively for us, I've realized because this is the start of a journey. When you ready yourself for an IPO, then you have to get engaged with somebody who will help you along in the entire process. So investment bankers obviously is where we transfer these relationships to, but the initial entry point we're trying to retain to ourselves. And I think that's worked, for now it's working beautifully. Also, I'd like to mention, I know you're talking about emerging markets in the 90s. You need to also recall, in Pakistan, we are a frontier market. Unfortunate reality is frontier market umbrella has, after COVID, is really reduced. So institutional capital that's looking at frontier markets is down to a minimum of, I think, $5 billion post-COVID. So we really have to climb the bandwagon, bring more middle tier companies so that our market cap, as you rightly point out, to GDP is substantially above the 20% where we stand today, right? Thank you very much. Harry, how are you, sir?
Oh, good, thank you.
So derivatives, I thought I'd put that question to you. That's one of the products we're looking at, options being introduced by June of next year. What expertise can we use from China? You have a very successful, deeply penetrated derivatives market in China. So guide us through.
Okay, in terms of product, I think in China, there are a few characters I think I would like to share with the audience here. And before that, I would like to thank, SECP and especially Chairman and also Commissioner, to invite me as the representative for the Chinese shareholder. And in terms of derivatives product, I think there are 5, futures exchange in China, and all of them, their first priority is to align their product innovation with the real economy needs. By saying that, I can give you guys a few examples. For instance, everybody knows that China is becoming one of the largest, EV producer, in the world. And for EV, battery is a crucial part. And everybody in China knows, it's very important for us to have the lithium. And so that's why, for futures exchange in Guangzhou, and they introduced lithium carbonate futures, in 2022, and it becomes a huge successful one, and because the industry definitely need it. And also, in China, when we eliminated property, the government, introduced the so-called insurance plus futures program, which means if you are a farmer, if you want your product, let's say Apple, and if the market drop tumble and the price down, and you don't have to worry about it. I mean, you can buy insurance. I mean, from the insurance provider, and that insurance provider can also, I mean, use the Apple futures product. I mean, to hedge its risk. And so these are the examples that, I mean, Chinese are focusing on how to use the derivative market, I mean, to help the real economy. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. I should also highlight to my team at PSX. So when Harry and I met yesterday, he mentioned the need for capacity building. And that was all that was we required in terms of the MOUs that we've signed with different exchanges. So he's offered help on the derivative side. His comment was, send me a team of people who are looking at the derivative space and we'll train them up. What better way of engaging? Thank you so much, Harry. Asif Qureshi sir.
Ji sir.
How are you today?
Alhamdulillah, so far.
How is the move, firstly, from the broking side to the asset management side?
I don't think that we are creating value, much value on either side, so not much of a difference.
That's too honest an opinion. Tell me, so from a retail perspective, how do we get more retail participation in the door, especially on the asset management side? What's working, what is not? What's your view?
I think there are two parts of it. First part is that, I think the earlier, delegates have also spoken about that, which is the basic need which needs to be done in Pakistan is creating awareness. I think there's a lot of work that PSX is doing on its part. I think awareness is one thing which needs to be done at a very big early level, maybe at the school level, so that people start believing actually saving. In Pakistan, once we start a career, we just think about, 60 years of age, like maybe eternity away. So you don't need to start saving immediately, just need to start spending as soon as start receiving your paychecks. And secondly, there is that element of faith that somebody will take care of you when you're at the age of 60, maybe somebody in the family or whatever. So we don't have a saving culture. So that's one thing that we need to actually work on. And secondly, what I have noticed that the number of accounts is actually directly proportional to the effort and the marketing spend that you undertake. So whenever you've launched marketing campaigns to attract more investors, we have seen a proportionate increase in a number of accounts. So I think those are two initial elements that I would think of at this stage, and considering that we are already running way behind schedule, so probably,
So you'll be happy to know we initiated a gamification strategy to attract the bulge of our population, which is under 30.
Absolutely. I think that's something which needs to be looked at. All the AI tools need to be used by all the market participants. I was in Korea just about a week, 10 days ago on a conference. And it's just amazing how things are being done in the developed world and even the more developing world, in terms of attracting these investors, the younger generation especially.
Thank you very much. So my apologies, we don't have time for a second round.